Picture this. It's Halloween, or maybe you're making that classic trip to the local mall to see Santa Claus. You've got your phone out, ready to capture those perfect smiles and laughs, a core memory to justify the $50 and the hour you just spent waiting in line. But then, the moment your toddler locks eyes with that giant fuzzy mascot or the costume neighbor, absolute chaos erupts. We've all seen it, right? The screams, the tears, the complete and total meltdown. It's honestly a highly stressful nightmare for everyone involved. But what is actually happening in their little brains in that exact moment? Well, welcome to this explainer, where we're going to break down the fascinating science behind costume terror. So why exactly do fun costumes cause such intense panic? I want you to step into the child's shoes for just a second. There is a massive, fundamental disconnect here between what we, as fully grown adults, consider to be a harmless, festive good time and the absolute raw terror that the toddler is experiencing in real time. I mean, think about it. Adults willingly pay good money to go to haunted houses to be terrified, yet we expect a toddler to unconditionally love a giant 6-foot mall rat. To us, hey, it's just Uncle Bob in a rubber mask. But to them, the fundamental rules of reality just broke. There's this massive empathy gap going on. What you see is a fun, harmless costume. Maybe it's some colorful face paint, a silly wig, or a cheap plastic mask you grabbed at the grocery store. But what they see is a completely unpredictable, unreadable threat. And we're going to use this explainer to bridge that exact gap. By the end of our time together, you won't just understand why they're screaming, you're going to know exactly how to help them through it. Part 1. The unreadable face. Let's dive straight into the evolutionary biology here. To really understand this panic, we have to recognize that human infants are biologically hardwired to scan faces for survival. And this brings us to something called the coulrophobia mechanism. Now, you might recognize the word coulrophobia as the clinical fear of clowns. But here's the thing. That exact same underlying scientific mechanism applies directly to masks, heavy face paint, and mascot costumes. It's caused by encountering a face you simply cannot read or interpret. From the second we're born, our brains are just desperate for cues about intent and emotion. Is this person happy? Are they angry? Am I safe? When a mask or heavy makeup hides or completely distorts all that vital data, the brain just hits a brick wall. And when a child hits that visual wall, it is terrifying for 3 distinct reasons. First, the facial features are totally unreadable. Painted smiles don't move, and the real eyes are usually hidden in shadow. Second, all that missing data creates ambiguous intent. They have absolutely zero idea what this towering creature is planning to do next. And third, it creates this uncanny, almost but not quite human appearance. Like, it's standing like a person, it's walking like a person, but something is deeply, deeply wrong. The developing brain simply cannot categorize it as a friend. When a child's brain can't verify the face, it doesn't just politely wait around to see what happens next. The default response is a triggered threat alarm. Think of it exactly like a highly sensitive, slightly malfunctioning security system. If the facial recognition software fails, the system automatically trips the absolute loudest alarm possible, just to keep the kid safe. So that screaming meltdown you're seeing, that isn't bad behavior. It's not a tantrum. It is a primal survival instinct kicking into absolute overdrive. Moving on to part 2, blurring fantasy and reality. Let's look at the psychological boundaries. Because aside from that biological alarm system, there's a massive psychological component at play here too. In toddlers and preschoolers specifically, the boundary between what's real and what's pretend is incredibly fragile. Their cognitive processing for faces is still maturing, sure, but so is their grasp on the permanent rules of the physical world. As developmental psychology tells us, to a toddler, the person didn't just put on a costume, they literally became the monster. Because that boundary between fantasy and reality is so immature, the child believes a magical and deeply terrifying physical mutation has just occurred right in front of their eyes. It's not their friendly neighbor pretending to be a werewolf. The neighbor is gone, and a living, breathing werewolf is now standing on the porch. When you frame it like that, honestly, no wonder they're terrified. So, part 3, how to ease the fear. Let's get into an actionable playbook. We've laid out the science, so what do we actually do about it? Well, here's your 3-step game plan. Show transformation, graded exposure, and give control. Starting with step 1, you have to dismantle the idea that the person just mutated. You make the transformation concrete by letting the child watch a familiar, safe person put the mask on and then take it right back off. Show them the actual mechanics of it. Let them see, hey, it's still just dad under there. Once they understand it's just an object, we move to step 2, graded exposure. You want to introduce the costume playfully, and this is crucial. Do it entirely at the child's pace. Start with, say, that Spider-Man mask, just sitting quietly on the living room couch. Then, eventually, move it across the room. Next, maybe have a trusted parent hold it casually while talking. And finally, maybe someone wears it very briefly. The key here is small, manageable steps. If you're prepping for Halloween, let them preview costumes online or in the store, and let them actively help choose what to buy. Which brings us to step 3, and honestly, this is the most vital step of the whole shebang. Let them say stop. You absolutely must give control back to the child. Let them decide the physical distance between themselves and the costume. Establish very clearly that they have the absolute power to halt the interaction at any time. When a child feels they have agency and control over a scary situation, their biological alarm system naturally starts to power down. Part 4. The one major mistake. This is exactly what you don't want to do. Even with the absolute best, most loving intentions, caregivers often fall into a common pitfall that completely derails all the amazing progress we just talked about. Never force a high five, never force a hug. Please do not surprise the child by jumping out with a mask on. And whatever you do, do not push them toward a costumed mascot at a theme park just so they can get over it. Forced exposure does not build courage. It violently spikes their fear. It basically confirms to their brain that they are in active danger and that their safe adult is totally ignoring the threat. Always show the person underneath if you can, and let the child approach purely on their own terms. Now, I do want to throw out a quick safety line here for some reassurance. Fear of masks and costumes is a completely normal, expected developmental phase. It usually peaks right in those toddler and preschool years. However, if this fear is intensely impairing your child's daily life, if it's kind of generalizing to other areas, or if it paralyzes them well beyond that expected developmental window, it's a really wise idea to consider professional input. Don't try to diagnose it yourself, just reach out to a pediatrician or a child psychologist to get some supportive guidance. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one really powerful question to think about. Are you letting them approach the world on their own terms? It is so incredibly easy for us to project our adult understanding of fun onto our kids. But true empathy means recognizing their biological alarms, honoring those blurry lines of reality, and giving them the space and control they need to feel truly safe. So the next time you see a toddler melting down at a mall Santa, you know the fascinating science behind exactly what's happening. The real question is, will you force them to smile for the camera, or will you help them understand the world?